Thank you for being here today. I'm Alara, and it's our pleasure to present our breakthrough research that brings together obsessors and machine learning. Monitoring fetal health is critical but challenging, primarily because we can only rely on indirect indicators like fetal heart rate until the baby is born. There are some problems associated with this approach, such as the change of misinterpretation and unnecessary producers due to the heart rate variation. To address this, we use the cardiography or CTG, a popular technique in observers to record fetal heart rate and uterine activity. Proper interpretation of these categories is essential for suitable treatment, and it is where we incorporate machine learning. In our research, we have used random forest logistic regression and gradient boosting methods to analyze CTG data, and it's aiming to categorize fetal conditions into normal, subacute, and pathological. The objective was to minimize the prediction error. Our findings have been encouraged. For example, the random forest classifier correctly predicted condition with an accuracy of 97.2%. We believe machine learning holds enormous potential in this field, improving monitoring prediction and simplifying communication of our results, thereby changing fetal health outcomes. We are excited to delve deeper into our research methods and the far researching implications of this study with you. Let's look at the dataset description. In this project, a CTG dataset from the University of California in Rome is used. There are 21 different features in it. These features include combination of measurements such as fetal health rate, uterine contraction pressure, and other related data points. TIA data at two main goals. Firstly, to identify patterns in the recordings, and secondly, to classify the fetal health into different categories, including normal, subset, and pathological. Now let's dive into the numbers. Dataset consists of the 2,126 observations, which are individual pieces of recorded information. Among these observations, 1,655 are labeled as normal, indicating that everything seems fine with the baby's health. And also, there are 225 observations classified as subsets and suggesting some concerns are potential issues. Finally, there are 176 observations classified as potential, indicating more serious health conditions. After an EET, we noticed that here we significantly more observation in the normal categories compared to the other categories, which needed addressing. In order to solve these issues, we applied a technique called SMOOTH, which stands for Scientific Minority Oversampling Technique, to balance the data. Now, my friend Emre will continue with this other part.
Hello, my name is Emre, and I will talk about our exploratory data analysis part of our project. In this slide here, you can see a histogram plot for each feature in the data frame. While some of the data are left skewed, some of them are right skewed, and some of them appear to be normally distributed. For example, if you look at the first plot, you can see that it is normally distributed. But if you look at the one next to it named acceleration, you can see that it is left skewed. The last histogram here shows us most of the data contains normal CTG values, which actually gives us an insight in how imbalanced that our data is, and we need to do something about this. In the next slide, we look into the relationship between the variables and the target variable. We can see that in some features, dataset displays dataset displays differences in suspect and pathological categories compared to normal CTGs. This variability is important. Thanks to it, we can understand the specific factors that contribute to explaining fetal health. We compare normal with suspect and pathological and look at the differences to see how features affect fetal health. In the next slide here, we look into the correlations between variables. We can see that histogram mode, histogram mean, and histogram median have a very high correlation among themselves, which suggests some of them may be redundant. However, further tests determine which features should be removed. If we look at the other slide here in this heat map, the statistics from the CTG exam graph are interconnected. When we built this model, we paid attention to the related factors. Here, if you can look at the bottom right part, this big red square, you can actually see that histogram mode, histogram mean, and histogram median are very correlated with each other, and they are all red. If we look at the next slide here, these plots show which features give which target variables. For example, in this first plot, we can see that high density baseline value is most likely to be from a pathological fetus. But if we look at the last plot, uh, we can see that high density is more likely to be from a normal fetus. And in this next slide, in this diagram shows us the percentage of normal, suspect, and pathological fetal health classes. We can see that approximately 78% of our fetuses were normal CTG values, while approximately 14% of them were suspect and 8% of them were pathological. This diagram actually shows us how our data set shows us how our data set was very imbalanced, and we need to do something about this too. And now I will give my word to Alara again for her to continue.
Classification metrics play a critical role in evaluation the performance of the classification models using the confusion metrics. Let's look at the accuracy. It's measured the overall correctness of the model's prediction by comparing the sum of the true positives and true negatives with the total number of samples. Prediction it's quietly the accuracy of positive prediction by dividing the true positives by the sum of the true positive and also false positive. Recall, it assesses the model's ability to correctly identify positive cases by dividing the true positive by the sum of the true positives and the false negatives. If one score, it combines the predictions and recall into the signal metric, providing a balanced measure of the model's effectiveness. So let's look at the other slides. Machine learning models. Random forest is an algorithm that combines many decision trees to make prediction. It's great for handling complex data, preventing overfitting, and works well for classification tasks. It's like a team of the trees working together and to give accuracy results. Logistic regression is a statistical algorithm for binary classification. It predicts probabilities based on the input features using a logistic function. By choosing a threshold, it assigns instead to positive or negative classes. Efficient and interpretable, it's popular for simple classification tasks where we want to understand relationship and make informed decision. Let's look at the gradient boosting. It's an example learning technique that combines weak learnings, like decision trees, to create a strong predictive model. It corrects mistakes by fitting new model to results for previous models. This iterative process improves accuracy and handles complex relationship in the data. And let's look at the other slides. Let's pass this. And we can pass the support and confusion metrics. It's, uh, we can pass this slide. Oversampling is a technique used in machine learning to address imbalanced datasets. It involves artificially increasing the number of the instances in the monetary class to balance it with the measure classes. This helps improve the model's ability to learn from the monetary class and make more accuracy predictions. After an EDA, we noticed that here we were significantly more observation in the normal category compared to the other categories, which needed the addressing. In order to solve these tissues, we applied techniques called smooth, which stands of the signating mandatory oversampling technique to balance the data. And let's look at the other slides. Here, dataset is split into the three unique classes, which is the pretended, one normal, subsequently, and three pathological things in there. So thank you for, and Ece will continue the other parts.
Hello, I'm Ece, and I will continue on with the results. As my friends told before, we applied the random forest model, and it was the first machine learning model we applied. Here, the precision is a measure of how many instances predicted as a certain class are actually correct. And in the table, it's shown for all of the classes. And it's the same for the recall, F1 score, and support. They are listed according to the class numbers. And here it's the confusion matrix. A confusion matrix is typically represented as a square matrix, where the rows correspond to the predicted class labels and the columns are represented as the actual class labels. And the diagonal elements of the matrix represent the correctly predicted instances for each class. In other words, it's the true positive ones. And the off-diagonal elements represent the misclassifications. Gradient boosting. In each machine learning method, we applied the same procedure. So here are the other lists, and it's good for us to compare them. And we can see here false positive and false negatives are slightly more than random forest has. Logistic regression. Here there is the accuracy percentage. As we can see, it's the lowest of them all. It has more false positives than false negatives, and the diagonal row, which is true positive, is less than the others. And the comprehensive result, as we did see from the plots, random forest was the best applied method. Gradient was slightly less good, and the logistic regression was the worst. And as for the result confusion matrix, it's like this. In 405 Fetal correctly predicted normal, and 389 Fetal correctly predicted as suspected, and 396 Fetal correctly predicted as pathological. After conducting data analysis, it was observed that there were significant imbalances within the dataset, which required us to use the oversample method. It was one of the most challenging things because it made us hard and have not good results with the logistic regression. The results obtained from the analysis revealed that two of the algorithms performed very well in predicted fetal health. However, when comparing the algorithms based on the performance metrics, it was observed that the random first was better than the others. It has higher accuracy in classifying the fetal health instances. The gradient boosting algorithm also showed satisfactory performance, while the logistic regression algorithm showed slightly lower performance in certain aspects. Logistic regression may struggle with imbalanced data, as it tends to be sensitive to the majority class and may have difficulties capturing patterns in the minority classes. In conclusion, the study successfully applied machine learning models for fetal health prediction. The application of oversampling proved to be effective in addressing data imbalances, ensuring a more accurate representation of the fetal health instances. The evolution of the multiple algorithms highlighted the superiority of random forest.